Okay, so this is section 9.2, and what we're going to look at today is graphing rational functions, meaning they're fractions, when we can use a parent function. Now in 9.3, we're going to look at some that don't have parent functions in the mix. Now what our parent functions are going to be today is 1 over x, or 3 over x, or 17 over x, some number over x. Now what you're going to see that we're going to have in the mix is after we graph that parent function, we're going to be able to move it side to side, up and down. We're going to be able to use the translations that we had before. Now I want us to start by getting our parent functions, and we're actually going to graph two on here. I'm going to graph this first one in blue, and then I'll graph the second one in red. So starting with the 1 over x, I'm just going to make a t-chart. And in my t-chart, I'm going to put in these x values. Now you can use different ones. These are the ones I'm going to use. -1 or -2, -1. I'm not going to put 0 in because that would put a 0 in the denominator and be undefined. So I'm going to skip 0, 1, and 2. And I'm just going to plug these in to my 1 over x and see what I get. So 1 over -2 is -1/2. 1 over -1 is -1. 1 over 1 is 1. 1 over 2 is +1/2. Now let me go through and put these on here, and then I'll show you what the graph looks like. So I'm going to go to -2, 1/2, and -1, -1, and then 1, 1, and 2, 1/2. Now here's what your graph of these type of parent functions look like. They are going to approach both axes, so y-axis and x-axis, and have two separate little curves. Now, on this graph right here, you have an asymptote at both, let me get a little bit darker color, at both the y-axis, so that's an asymptote right there, and at the x-axis. So you've got asymptotes right there. Okay, this is what your parent function looks like. Now, if I graph 3 to the x, honestly, it's going to look pretty similar. The only difference is going to be the exact points. It's still going to have those asymptotes at 0, 0. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to plug in -2, -1, skip 0, because 3 over 0 would be undefined, 1 and 2. And then I'll plug in my numbers. Okay, now I'm going to plot these points. So I'll have -2, -1.5, -1, -3. So here's my graph there. See how it's not quite as steep, but it's still going to generally look the same. So you'll kind of know what they should look like. And 2, 1, and 1/2. So see how all it affects is the steepness of the graph, but it doesn't really affect the shape. So all of these are going to kind of look this way. Now what I'm going to go through and do is I'm going to use, in my next problem, I'm going to use this parent function right here. I want you to look at what this problem says. It says 1 over x minus 2 minus 3. So your parent function is 1 over x. Now once I've graphed that, now I want y'all to think back to all of the graphing we've done before, I'm going to move my graph to the right 2 and down 3. Now y'all remember when we had those translations before? Now I've already set up a t-chart for 1 over x. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab my little t-chart here. I've already done that work, so I'm not going to repeat it. I'll bring it, put it right there. Okay, so that's my parent function. I'm going to go ahead and graph that. So remember, you will have your asymptotes on the parent function here and here. and then your graph, and I didn't put it in the exact points, but remember your graph looked like that. I didn't put in exact points, but y'all know what I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to translate this just a little bit differently than I did before. What I'm going to do is first of all go through and I'm just going to translate my asymptotes. Then I can kind of fill in my graph from there. So I'm going to move my asymptotes to the right 2 and down 3. So that's kind of where I'm going to put my asymptotes. 1 horizontal and 1 vertical. Now see how I took my asymptotes and I moved them over 2 down 3? I'm going to do that first this time because what I can do from here is I can kind of sketch in my parent function already moved over. So what I'm going to go through and do, and think about this, okay? What I'm going to go through and do is I'm going to graph my parent function points. Those should be graphed from 0, 0. I'm going to treat this right here like it's 0, 0. If I do that, I will have already moved my graph to the right 2, down 3. So it's a little bit easier way to deal with it than what we've done before. Okay, so -2, -1/2, -1, -1. Okay, approach my asymptotes. 1, 1, 2, 1/2. All right, that is my graph of this right here. Now I'm going to promise y'all something. This is something I will expect you to do without a calculator. So make sure that you've got your parent functions in your head. I don't want you like graphing it on your calculator and then sticking it on a coordinate grid or something. I want you to be able to do this without a calculator. Okay, let's do one more of these and then we're going to change gears just slightly. All right, so here's our graph. Now here's what we need to do. My parent function is going to be 2 over x. Once I have that, I'll move it to the left 6 and down 1. So I can go ahead and move my asymptotes. Instead of being here at 0 and 0, I'm going to go back 6, down 1, and that's where I'm going to put in my asymptotes. Okay, so let's do that quickly, and then we'll get our parent function so that we know where to graph things. All right, so I've moved my asymptotes. Now I'm going to do my little t-chart. And remember, skip 0 because it's going to be undefined anyway. So I'll have 2 over -2 is -1, -2 because it'll be 2 over -1, 2, and 1. And I'm going to graph those in. Now remember, I'm going to graph them like this is my 0, 0. So I will have automatically moved them back 6, down 1. So -2, -1, -1, -2. And then make these approach the asymptotes. 1, 2, and 2, 1. And again, approach and approach. And that's my graph. Now, what you'll notice is on these, I kind of take care of moving it first, and then I can kind of graph my parent function like my asymptotes are my x and my y. So it'll save you a little bit of time and a little bit of effort than actually moving everything after you've done the parent function. Okay, now I want us to kind of go backwards a little bit. What I want to do is I want us to write an equation. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to sketch what they're talking about. Now I don't need a perfect sketch, but I need something to look at. So it says, write an equation for the translation of y equals 2 over x, there's my parent function, that has the given asymptotes. So x equals 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's my vertical asymptote. And -8's my horizontal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, now they didn't ask me to graph it, but I know what my translations are. My translations are I'm moving to the right 4 and down 8. So when I go through and I put that in my equation, I want to move to the right 4, now which means I need the built-in negative, and down 8. Now remember how this is your side-to-side move, this is your up and down. If you can kind of graph it or kind of get an idea of what the graph would look like first, you can go ahead and kind of put those in there. Okay, and then here's the last one we're going to look at. And I want us to graph this, but before we're ready to graph, we need to get it in the form, we need to get it in y equals something. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to solve for the y right there. So I'll move the 5 over, and then I'll divide by the x, get that y by itself. All right, so that's what I have. Now I've got two choices here. I could go through and I could do 5 to the x, and then the negative would mean I'm going to flip it over the x-axis. Or I could just go ahead and plug in negative 5 over x into my coordinate, into my t-chart here. That's what I'm going to do. So I'll have negative 5 over negative 2 is positive 2.5. I'll have negative 5 over negative 1 is positive 5. I'm going to keep doing that. So negative 5 over 1 is negative 5. And negative 5 over 2 is negative 2.5. Okay, now let me go ahead and put on my asymptotes here. They're going to be at 0, 0. Because I'm not moving it side to side or up or down because I don't have any numbers there. Then I'm going to just plot my points. Now this time I went ahead and left the negative in when I plugged it in, so I don't have any translations to do. Hold on, I graphed that in the wrong place. Negative 2, negative 2.5, negative 1, positive 5. All right, so there's the first one, 1, negative 5, and 2, negative 2.5. So then I'll approach here and approach there. Now I want you to notice, compared to some of the other ones that we had, let me scroll back for a second, see how if it's positive, I would have them here and here. When I had a negative out there, and mine was negative 5, but when I had a negative, it flipped them up to the different quadrants here. It's not too surprising when we think about everything that we know about graphs and about the negatives and what they do to the graphs. It's really not that surprising. All right, so this is 9.2. Remember, make sure you can do this without a calculator.